Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm 20 years old, and I thought I understood life perfectly and didn't need anyone's help for anything. I would have never imagined that something like this was possible if I hadn't seen it with my very own eyes. Here's what happened to me. I was horribly late for work, though I had just started this job a couple of weeks before. I was holding 4 cups of coffee for my coworkers. But when I rushed into the elevator, I collided with a guy and dropped 2 of the cups. It was a complete disaster. I didn't have time to go and get new coffees.
What's your name? Maggie, you say? Don't worry. It's just coffee. Take mine. Come on. I did something like that too, when I was new here.
It was Brady from the next department over. He had handsome and intelligent eyes, strong arms, and his career was really taking off. At our workplace, you weren't supposed to date your coworkers, but I only had to meet him once to start fantasizing about him. Over the following weeks, I found out his schedule and I tried to catch him around, but he was always in too much of a hurry or he was with someone else. As I now know, it would have been for the best if things had remained that way, if it hadn't been Christmas time. We had a holiday party right in the office. It was already after midnight, but my workplace was as crowded as during the day. All night long, I waited for the right moment, and as soon as Brady was alone, I sat across from him.
Hi, Wendy. I see you're not holding any coffee today.
It's Maggie. Yeah, no coffee, and no plans for tomorrow evening, or next weekend.
Usually, I'd go to Florida for the holidays, but this year, I couldn't find anyone else who wanted to go.
I told him I'd be happy to go with him.
I think now it would be hard to book 2 decent rooms.
2? 1 would already be enough. He stared at me, and I stared back. 3 hours later, we were at the airport. Then we spent a few days in the sun, or at our swank hotel room with the Do Not Disturb sign on the door. When we got back, Brady asked me not to tell anyone about what we had done. He had never said to anyone that we were dating. He felt that many people might interpret that badly. After all, he was 5 years older than me, and he was in a high position in the company. For the next 2 months, I always had to call him or message him myself. Often he said that he was too busy, but he would still agree to meet me sometimes, and that gave me hope. One fine morning, I noticed that a tight-fitting dress I had looked oddly on me. My stomach had gotten noticeably rounder, though I wasn't eating much because I was so nervous. I looked at the calendar. 6 weeks! I wasn't even paying attention to the date. It was completely crazy, but I knew what it meant. I bought 3 tests from the pharmacy at once just to be sure. 2 lines on the test wouldn't have meant the end of the world, but that was what I was expecting. In fact, all of the tests came out negative. I waited another week, but nothing changed, though my tummy got a little bigger. I told Brady that I was pregnant. He thought it over for a while and finally said,
All right, let's do this.
I was so happy. He just asked me not to tell anyone about the 2 of us until we had visited the doctor together. I don't know why, but I kept putting that off. I wanted Brady to establish a strong bond with me and our future baby, and I was afraid that my hopes and dreams would be ruined. You see, I realized that there was something wrong with me. My belly was growing so fast it was scary, and I was no longer able to hide it under clothing. My mom had told me that women in our family don't show at all until the 9th month. After about 2 weeks, I noticed stretch marks around my belly button. Plus, I had aches and pains and a migraine. But I didn't say anything about my worries to Brady. We finally seemed like a normal couple, and I didn't want to ruin everything. Each morning, I noticed that my stomach had grown even bigger overnight. The crazy idea came into my head that I was like Bella Swan and about to give birth to a vampire. That was silly, of course. But I felt like whatever was growing inside of me was sapping me of strength, pushing on my internal organs, and it was something dangerous. In fact, over dinner, Brady took a good look at me, gulped, and said,
You know, my grandmother had triplets. Maybe you're carrying more than one baby.
His suggestions put me at ease a bit. At least it was better than my own worries. I didn't know how much longer I could keep putting off a visit to the doctors, since Brady wasn't insisting on taking me there. But one day, I passed out at work. I still kept hoping that the ultrasound would make him set a date for our wedding, but in fact, the hospital set a date for an operation. If you could have seen the doctor's face when he saw my changes on the screen, he said that in his 20 years of medicine, he had never encountered a problem of this size. They operated on me on the same day. They said they couldn't delay the operation for a minute longer, and they had to get this thing out of me as fast as possible. The doctor said that I had a huge tumor on my left ovary, which weighed as much as 4 babies. I was very lucky. The tumor turned out to be benign, so there was no need for further treatment. But I was still shaken because there are concerns about whether I will be able to have children in the future. Now, Brady no longer had a reason to keep meeting me. He escorted me from the hospital and then answered my calls for another week more. After a month, he started avoiding me at work. Then he said that he had met someone else and it didn't make sense for us to keep in touch, but he told me to take care of myself and pay attention to my health. I must still give him his due because he always stayed with me while I was sick. And that's all. Thank you for listening to my story.
Two months ago, I said yes to my new boyfriend, and today is our wedding. I'm Eve. I'm 22, and this is the most important day of my life. I dreamed about this since childhood, and over I imagined how the ceremony would take place, what my dress would be like, my groom. John, my soon-to-be husband in 5 minutes, does not look like the one I pictured in my daydreams, but it was he who wanted to take me down the aisle. He is the perfect man. I know that for sure. But yet again, my heart aches with sadness. It always happens when I remember Ray. We were together for more than 2 years before I met John, but he never proposed. I'm not sure that he even loved me. In the battle for attention with his damned monster truck, I always ended up in second place. He never gave me flowers, didn't plan romantic dates. True, I knew that if someone offended me, he would not take it kindly. I knew that he would spare no expense to buy what I needed. I knew that he would look at me for a long time when he thought I was sleeping and didn't notice. But when I decided to have a serious conversation, he told me that getting married was not part of his plans, and that we were too young to be thinking about marriage, despite the fact that he was 29. I did not want to wait for something that might not happen and decided to break up with him. I still shudder when I remember his eyes when I told him, but he didn't say anything. He just let me go. John is completely different. With him, everything is simple and clear, and he is happy to fulfill my childhood dream. So we're holding each other's hands, the weather is wonderful, the orchestra is playing, the guests are looking at us with enthusiasm, standing in the shade of an oak tree. I'm ready to utter those cherished words, I do, when suddenly, the air shook from a terrible roar. The birds in the trees exploded into flight. The guests were startled and began to scatter in a hurry. Standing with my back to the approaching noise and seeing the fright on John's face, I didn't dare turn around. After all, I recognized this sound as soon as I heard it. The wild growl of an awkward car on huge wheels. It could only have been Ray's creepy monster truck. He zoomed across the lawn, flattened the tables and chairs for the guests, and did a couple of laps while the song Highway to Hell blasted at full volume. After a few minutes, all the guests ran away. My ex got out of the car and resolutely started in my direction. I met him with fists, tears, and curses. How could he ruin my perfect wedding? I ran away from the ex and the groom, and all day I didn't answer the phone. That night, sitting at the window in a wedding dress, stained with tears and smeared lipstick, I answered yes to the only message I read. It was from Ray.